gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank everyone who showed up. You know, it's so heartwarming for me to see that so many of you are willing to come out in person. It's really, really emotional for me to see how many of you have actually turned out. You know, we put on together this program, and I thought to myself, if I get 10 to 15, I'd be lucky. And look how many people have come out. So thank you very, very much, first of all, to all of you for really taking the time out. Thank you very much to Seed. When I joined the shul, we had a partnership, a strategic partnership with Seed, which for whatever reason had to be terminated. But I think that even though we might not have this long-term partnership together with Seed, we still stand to gain so much from the incredible work that Seed does. Rabbi Shaya, Rabbi Hassan, Rabbi Ross, Rabbi Litwin. They have many, many wonderful people and many wonderful women as well. They give great shiurim over there. And I think these partnerships stand to enhance us, but also stand to enhance them. And so it's my great pleasure tonight to call upon Rabbi Hassan, who's going to be our first speaker. He's going to be speaking this week, next week, and a couple of weeks' time. This we're going to be talking about how can I know if there is a God? How would you like to do it about as far as the questions is concerned? Questions in the middle or questions in the end?
Pertinent questions in the middle.
Okay, so pertinent questions in the middle. There will be a chance to ask questions at the end. Rabbi Hassan is one of the Seed educators. One of the things Seed is very good with is accepting questions from people. So everybody will get a chance to ask their question or to voice their opinion. So thank you very much, Rabbi Hassan, for joining us. So this week is about whether there is a God. Next will be about the giving of the Torah at Sinai. And the week after will be about the transmission and Chinese whispers. We then move on to suffering, which I'll speak about, and then Rabbi Shai Gunfer will be giving a shiur entitled The Seven Wonders of Jewish History. You can come to one, you can come to all. I do hope that if you enjoyed tonight, you let your friends know that it was really well attended, that it was a successful event. And if you do feel that for whatever reason something didn't go right for you tonight, please come and speak to us. We'll try to write it. We have over here, as you can see, as I promised, the camera. We have my camera over here, and Rabbi Hassan is mic'd up with a mic that hopefully is going to be transmitting the sound straight over there, so that there'll be perfect sound for that as well. And, you know, anybody who hasn't gotten these, but if you want to share it with them, hopefully on Thursday with my email, I'll be sharing out a link for this year tonight. Thank you again for coming, and I hand over to Rabbi Hassan.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, essentials of Judaism. So what is the biggest essential of Judaism? What's a big first lesson we taught the world? That there is a God, right. But over the past 300 years, the onslaught from the secular world has managed to weaken our understanding. So let's go back to square one. How can I, whoever I am, how can I find out, how can I know there is a God? Not me, not somebody else, not a scientist, not a rabbi, each one of us individually. Can we find out as individuals for ourselves? Okay, that's what we're going to try and do. Now let me get this right. Yeah. Secondly, where does our world come from? Again, how can I find out, whoever I am? Can we find out for ourselves where our world comes from? And unfortunately, common sense is not necessarily very common. So we're going to try and use our common sense to find our own answers to big questions. Not my answer to your questions. Each one of you, each one of us will try and get your own answers to the big questions. Just a definition before we start. Science. What is science precisely? So it's knowledge about or study of the natural world based on facts learned through experiments and observation. Well, that's a reliable definition of science. Given that, needless to say, no one was present at the creation of the world. No one was there to see the origins of creation. It's impossible. There cannot be a true scientific explanation. There can be speculation, there can be extrapolation, but no observation by definition. Just to get that clear, a scientist can't say, I know what happened, because nobody was observing what happened. Okay, let's try a little experiment. Let's imagine we all signed up for a safari holiday, but from a company who's guaranteed they'll take us to a place where hardly anybody has been there, and hopefully no one has been there before. They can't promise it, but it's so desolate, it's so natural, you really enjoy it. And the chances are, they're almost sure, nobody's ever been here before. They gave us an option. Did we want Patagonia? Did we want Siberia? Did we want Australian desert? We chose one. We are there. We all arrived together. They set up camp. So, right, here we are now. Ladies and gentlemen, you can now go on walks every day for the next few days. It's part of the holiday. Enjoy yourselves, see nature as it is. And the chances are no one has ever been here before. We can't promise, but the chances are. Now, one of us has got a sense of humor and says to the others, I'm going to try and find proof that somebody's been here before. I'll try. Maybe I'll find an empty can of Coke. Maybe I'll find an empty beer bottle. Maybe I'll find something. Let's try. Okay, so off we go, and we're enjoying the beautiful scenery, and somebody spots stones. 3 stones, and you'll see what I've got here. Yeah, 3 stones making a tiny little pyramid. So somebody says, do you think somebody did that? And somebody else says, not likely. Maybe, maybe not. You can't say somebody's been here. Okay, but imagine that we see a bit more of a structure. It's not 3, now it's 6. Now, think to yourself, what do you think? You don't need to tell anybody, just make up your mind. Do you think that this means somebody has been here? It's not a trick question, there's no answer. What do you think? What do I think? What does anybody think? Did somebody want to say something?
Probably yes.
You'd say yes. Would anybody say no? It could be an accident.
The scientist would say you want to see it repeated.
They would say that?
The scientist would say you need to see it repeated.
You need to see it repeated. Okay, repeated. Actually, you don't even need to repeat that itself. Would you need to see this repeated as well to be sure that somebody's been here before? At which point will everybody agree someone's been here before?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? And some people might say, even with less than 10, also it's a sign somebody's been here before. So this is a simple structure. And we are convinced someone's been here before. Why? Another example. All these cases, a kindergarten child can do that, but still will say someone's been here before. Okay, now the question is it an accident or is it a design? And this is going to be our key phrase tonight. Accident or design? Is this structure here an accident or a design? So we all came to the conclusion that certainly if there are 10 points, it's certainly a design and not an accident. All right? We all agreed on that? This is design, this is not accident. Okay, now we have to try and extrapolate. If that's what we think about a simple structure, can we take it further and examine the world to see whether other things are accident or design? One example. Is this less complicated or more complicated than a pyramid of 10 stones?
More.
Is it more complicated? Huh? Is it more surely a structure? It's not an accident, it's a design. And this is much better than our pyramid, because here you've got movement, you can play the piano, you can knit, you can crochet, you can play the violin, you can write, so many things. And there's at least 14 bones in the hand. 14 in Hebrew alphabetic numerals is Yod and Daled. Yad. You know the Hebrew for hand? Yad. Okay. So this is much more complicated than our pyramid. So we would all agree this is design and not accident. And in this way we can look all over the world and look at everything. Anything we see, is it design or accident? Okay, this was design. Now let's move to accidents. Lotteries are designed to be accidents. Okay? Lotteries are designed to be accidents. And if a lottery is not an accident, you want your money back. Okay, right. Let's say that there's a series of accidents. How many accidents in a row of this sort start making you suspicious? Let's join the fraud squad. Okay? We are responsible here, we are the office workers in the municipal fraud squad to make sure that anything which goes wrong, illegal in town, we have to chase it up. One of our workers comes in one Monday morning and says, guess what? My next door neighbour just won the first prize in the municipal lottery. £1 million. Great, fine. Somebody has to win. Next Monday she comes in again. You wouldn't believe it. My next door neighbour's won the lottery a second time round. Hang on. Does anybody feel something funny going on? And the mathematician says, every lottery is totally independent of every other one. The fact that one person won this week doesn't mean he can't win next week. It's mathematically, statistically, anybody can win. Nothing to worry about. And then, the third week, again, her next door neighbour won the first prize in the lottery for the third week in a row. Now, at which stage do you feel that some fishy business is going on? Yes or no? No. No? No, not necessarily. Somebody has to win. If all the tickets are sold, somebody has to win. Okay, he's very lucky. And if it happens in the fourth week in a row, at which point are we all going to take a vote and say, we better make sure he's not hacking into the computer system? 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to be the biggest critic? Go on, tell me. At which point would you say, never?
Just think I want those numbers.
So 2, 3, 4 or 5. When do we say we have to investigate? 3? 2? No, you can't investigate on 2, I'm sorry. He'll sue you afterwards. 5? Will you all agree on 5? No? Okay, 6? Is there a number where we will all agree this deserves an investigation? No. 10? 15?
Well, the greater number of times it occurs,
yes,
the more suspicious we
the
get.
greater the number, the more suspicious we are. But at which point do we dare launch an investigation?
If you don't like your neighbour the second time.
Pardon? Yeah?
If you don't like
If you don't like your neighbour the second time.
Second time? No,
The lottery company would be investigating and checking.
you get the point I'm making. Comes a point when everybody's going to say, this is impossible. How can a guy win the first prize week after week after week? Because lotteries are accidents. But how many accidents in a row are still an accident? Okay. How many accidents are needed to produce the human body, the body of an ant, the body of a bird, or any living body? How many accidents? If you were to say, right, the hand is designed, okay? If the hand was not designed, if the hand was an accident, and then the other hand is an accident, and the eyes are an accident, and the knees are an accident, and the feet are an accident, how many accidents, one after the other one, can you put in a row and say, it's still accidents? How many? Just take a couple of simple examples from nature. a woodpecker. Okay? So he's holding onto a tree vertically. He's got his tail feathers stuck in at the bottom to keep his balance. And he pecks at the tree. He finds insects behind the bark. He puts his tongue in and pulls out the insects and eats the insects. That's a woodpecker. Now, how many factors does a woodpecker need, different to all the other birds? Each one different to all other birds, to be a woodpecker. He needs special claws to hold on vertically. Most birds don't have those claws. Birds survive without those claws. This one's got these claws. He needs special tail feathers to support the vertical position. You saw it in the picture. He needs a special strong beak to peck through the wood. Not all birds have a strong beak like that. His beak has to have cushioning to protect his skull because he's banging away his head. You know, try banging your head against the wall 3, 4, 5 times, see what happens. Okay? He needs special neck muscles for repetitive bang, 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 bang. He needs special hearing to detect bugs under the bark. Not all birds have it. He needs a especially long tongue, which is barbed and sticky, to draw out the insects. So here we have a series of, each one by itself you would call, more than likely, you would say is a design. Most of you would say each item is a design. And put all those together, even if they're all accidents, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 accidents. How many accidents does it need to produce a woodpecker when millions of other birds survive without being woodpeckers? How on earth did bird become a woodpecker? Why? Another example.
Rabbi,
Yes?
do we know how long it took the woodpecker to evolve?
That's what I'm asking you. Did a woodpecker evolve? Did a woodpecker need to evolve when all other birds survive perfectly well without being woodpeckers? Why should it become a woodpecker? Imagine the first bird decides to become a woodpecker. And he's not a woodpecker. So he goes to a tree and says, I'm going to have a bash at that tree. Bang! He bangs his head. Right? If he doesn't break his neck, he just falls back. He's going to try again and again and again. And then he's going to lay an egg to produce a little bird which is going to try exactly Did a woodpecker evolve? Does it make sense? When you have so much design and so many, if there are accidents, so many accidents one after the other one, and you can look at the whole of nature this way.
I didn't mean quite that. I mean, maybe the first attempt at producing a woodpecker was this design, and then it was realised it didn't have a strong...
Who was it?
Oh, well. That's what I'm trying to...
Who was it? So, in other words, is it design or accident? If it's design, there has to be a designer. All right. Okay, let's carry on. Just one other example. Venomous snakes, right? Most snakes in the world are not venomous. So snakes can survive without venom and without injecting venom into others. They can. Most do. They don't need it. So, for example, snakes do not need venom to survive. Why did the venomous snake evolve? He had to create a complex poison. Now that's information. We're coming up to a new idea now. Information. How did the snake know the recipe for a poison? Secondly, how could it create the antidote within itself to survive the poison in its system? Right? That's 2 points it has to develop. Then it needs, now this is really a big one. It needs to know that this poison will be poisonous to other creatures' biochemistry. It's one thing to know within yourself, maybe, how you're going to develop. But how can you know what that person, that animal, that bird, that insect, how they will be affected by this poison? So I make up this concoction to make sure that this other creature is going to be affected. How do they know that? The snake, how can the snake know what kills a cow? How does it know?
Process of trial and error.
Yeah, and in the meantime it died of hunger.
There are a lot of snakes.
But most snakes don't have it.
No, but there will be a lot of same snakes of that species. I mean, according to evolutionary theory.
According to evolutionary theory, now what I'm going to challenge you is the following. Given your understanding within yourself, and you don't have to tell me, that this, for example, a simple structure is design and not accident. And given what you think about a series of accidents in the lottery, that there's a limit to how many accidents one after the other one. So, does a poisonous snake say design or accident? Don't tell me. Tell yourself, right? I'm not trying to tell you what I think. I'm trying to help you work out for yourself how you should be thinking. You think that a simple structure is a design and not an accident. At some point, a structure of 3, a structure of 6, a structure of 10, at some point you say this is design, not accident. Then, accidents. How many accidents in a row will you accept are all really accidents and not suspect there's something funny going on? At some point you'll say there's a limit to how many accidents can happen one after the other one, and again and again and again and again and again, and they're all coordinated with each other. That's what our common sense is telling us. I'm trying to suggest that's the way you think. You don't have to agree with me. I'm just trying to help you work out for yourself, what do you think? Think for yourself. And on top of it, the snake had to develop the hypodermic delivery system as well. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is this accident or design? We're trying to look at the world. Is the world the result of accident or design? Right. Okay, so if common sense says that it's design and not accident, how come that so many people's common sense does not tell them that it is design and not accident, and huge numbers of people in the world are convinced it's all a series of accidents and another accident and another accident, and it's not a design and it's not a design? How come? Okay, the question has been asked long time ago, and let's get the answer given by one of the great Jewish thinkers of medieval times, 1,000 years ago, Rabbi Bachya, who wrote a very famous book, Chorot HaLevavot, and he asks how come people don't see it. So he tells us a story of an abandoned baby. Okay, an abandoned baby. I won't keep a picture on in order to spare the ladies the distress. An abandoned baby. He tells the following story. A couple are walking in a desolate part of the countryside and they hear a baby crying. What do you do if you're walking in the desolate part of the countryside and you hear a baby crying? What does anybody do? You follow the sound. And if you find a baby, what do? You pick it up. Even a man will pick it up. Right? You'll pick it up. Okay? But there's no one around. So you take the baby home with you. There's no social services in those days. You take the baby home with you. What do you do with the baby? You adopt the baby. What can you do? You're not going to let the child die. So you've now got an extra child in your family. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, this child grows up with your family. Part of the family. You're a kind person, and you don't only look after babies. You've just heard that there's a prisoner in a dungeon held by the local lord somewhere because he never paid his rent, and he's rotting away there. So you feel sorry for the guy, and if you know what medieval dungeons are like, I hope you don't, it was hell, and he's been there for a while and he's in a bad shape. So you approach this lord who owns this castle where the prisoner is, and you say to him, I'll negotiate. How much does he owe you? 10,000? I'll give you 3. No, okay. 3.5. No, 4. In the end, you settle. All right, we'll give you 5,000. Okay, fine. So you pay, you redeem the guy, you take him home with you, and he's a wreck. You've got to take his clothes off and burn them because of all the lice. You've got to bath him, you've got to shave him, you've got to give him a haircut, you've got to feed him and feed him again, and put him to bed and help him. Slowly, after a few weeks he starts gaining his strength, he can get up, he starts walking around, and after 5-6 weeks he's on his feet again. Right? He's ready to go on his way. So you've done two big mitzvahs in your life. Adopted a baby, and you saved this guy from the dungeon. Right. At this point in time, the baby is old enough to go off into the world, at the same time as the prisoner is ready to go away. Which of the two is going to be more grateful to you? The child who you brought up for 15, 16 years, 17 years, or the prisoner who's been in your home for 6 weeks? Who's going to be more grateful? The child? Who's going to be more grateful? The prisoner. Why is the prisoner going to be more grateful than the child?
Because the child's never known.
Because the child? Who receives more? The child receives more. And who appreciates more?
Prisoner.
Because
Yes, the child takes it for granted.
we were all children once, and we all took our parents for granted. And then when we become parents, and we realize, of course children, that's human nature. Children take their parents for granted. That's normal. Of course mummy makes supper every night. Of course daddy pays all the bills. Right? That's normal. So it's because we take it for granted. So he says, the reason why we don't see the design in creation, in the world, all around us, is because we take it for granted. We were born in it, brought up in it, never knew any different. Like children don't think about what the parents are doing for them. None of us think about what the world is doing for us. Of course the sun shines every day. Of course it rains. Of course there's carrots on the table every other day. Of course there's peas all the time. Of course there's apples all the time. It's normal, it's natural, it's nature. Nobody stops and thinks, why? It's human nature. So is it design? Or is it an accident? And if it's design, what are we looking for? Not just looking for design. In the design, there's wisdom. Right? There's wisdom in the design. There's wisdom in my hand. I've got a thumb. Have you ever tried doing anything without a thumb? If your thumb is hurting anywhere and you can't use the thumb, can you do anything? Can you carry a cup of tea? In olden days, when kings wanted to torture their enemies, what did they do to them? Cut the thumbs off. Right? So there's design, there's wisdom. It's not only wisdom, it's kindness. All these wise things in creation give us a huge amount of pleasures. Again and again and again. An apple is designed, and an apple is nice. A strawberry is designed, a strawberry is nice. Whatever you eat, whatever you enjoy, it's not just wisdom, and it's healthy, and it's satisfying, and it's nutritious. It's nice as well. So there's in the designed world, there's wisdom and there's kindness. Now let's go back to the Gemara, the Talmud. An incident. It sounds like a children's story, but it's a great Jewish sage, Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest ever, brilliant man, and he records a simple way of looking at this issue. It's so simple, but it hits the nail on the head. So a heathen once came to Rabbi Akiva and said, who created the world? God created the world, Rabbi Akiva replied. Prove it to me, persisted the heathen. Come back tomorrow, Rabbi Akiva told him. The following day, the heathen comes back. Rabbi Akiva engaged him in conversation. What are you wearing? A cloak, as you can see. Who made it? Rabbi Akiva asked. The weaver, of course. I don't believe it. Prove it. Prove it to me, says Rabbi Akiva. What proof do you want? Can't you see that the weaver has made the cloth? So why do you ask for proof that God created the world? Cannot you see that the Holy One, blessed be He, created? It's a very simple, virtually a children's story. A very simple way of saying one of the biggest wisdoms in creation. If there is design, and there is, that's it, design. If there is design, it shows the designer. To his disciples, Rabbi Akiva added, my children, just as the house is proof of the builder, the cloth is proof of the weaver, the door is proof of the joiner, so this world proclaims that God created it. Don't call him God if you don't want to, but if there's design and there's wisdom and something has been made, somebody made it. So, Is it common sense? Is it not common sense? If it is common sense, why does this huge sections of society don't accept it? Now, here you all, I think most of you have agreed that simple structures are not accidents. Am I speaking to the converted? Simple structures are not accidents. Okay. Your common sense tells you design. Okay. Carry on. Let's have a look at a few things in creation which are so incredible. Information. When Darwin started, he knew nothing about DNA. Nothing. And by the way, Darwin's completely scientifically rejected totally for years already. About 50 years ago, Professor Branova got out of Russia. He was the Jewish academic who got out of Russia, who had to pay the most money to the government for the whole string of degrees and doctorates which he had taken. Don't know how he got the money, but he managed to raise the money and he paid his way out. And he gave a lecture. It was in Johannesburg at the time. I was there. And after the lecture, somebody said, what about evolution? So he said, I've been mixing in the top scientific circles in Russia for the past, I don't know how many years. Not one of them believes in evolution. Right? That's as far, Darwin's finished. Scientifically, he's finished. Now, he knew nothing about DNA. So there is information in the creation. It's not just building bricks. There's information there. Where does information come from? From DNA. Where did DNA come from? How does inanimate material create information? DNA is information. How does, if the world is a result of inanimate material developing or evolving, how does inanimate material create information? Every cell in our bodies, every seed, every operational system in nature's packed with information which guides it. Bats and sonar, birds and homing, information everywhere. Where does information come from? Darwin said, yeah, the beaks of the birds were growing longer or shorter and the claws were changing. That can happen as animals are developing. But the information in there, where does information come from? Again, information is information. Information is more complex than everything else. Is information accident or design? Anthony Flew, you may have not ever heard of him. He was a leading British 20th century atheistic philosopher. He taught in many universities, telling his students all the time, atheism, 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 atheism. It came as a shock to some of his humanists, to some of, sorry, there's a word missing there. So a couple of words missing. It came as a shock to some of his humanist friends when he announced in a video entitled "Has Science Discovered God?" that aspects of biological order, order, system, design, order, especially in DNA, had led him to believe in intelligent design after all. So he is a dedicated teacher of atheism. In the end he said, look, DNA, for him, all we've been discussing before, he knew, and he knew all the philosophy, and he was ignoring it, he was disproving it. But when it came to DNA, he just had to accept it. How did inanimate matter produce life? If everything started, there is life. Now, if everything started as matter, how did inanimate matter produce life? So again, another scientist, British astronomer Sir Fred Hoyle, he passed away just last year. He said the chances of a gigantic primordial soup of chemicals producing life is equal to the chances of a hurricane tearing through a junk yard producing a fully outfitted Boeing 747. Okay? When there's design, when there's information, somebody must have done it. Now this is an interesting story. E equals HF. All right. E equals energy. F equals frequency. H is a constant. This H is known as Planck's constant. Now, don't ask me to tell you what Planck's constant is, because I don't know. But let me tell you a story. There was a religious young man in the United States who used to visit an old Jewish professor in an old age home regularly, just to keep his spirits up and chat with him. On one occasion they were talking, and the old professor said, Albert said, Albert who? What do you mean Albert who? Albert Einstein. Oh, you knew Albert Einstein? Of course, I used to work with him. Really? So this religious young man took opportunity and said, tell me, did Einstein believe in God? So the professor said, he said to me, I've got no time for formal religion, but there has to be a creator because of Planck's constant. Now, I don't know what Planck's constant is, but to a man like Einstein, the fact that there is a constant in mathematics and in physics, which is constant, that cannot have happened by itself. So it depends who you are, how you see that there has to be, right? Again, everything I've been telling you before, Einstein knew it, but it didn't do anything for him. When it came to Planck's constant, he realized it can't be an accident, it has to be a design. I'll tell you another story. Let's come back to ourselves. Imagine you're a jigsaw puzzle enthusiast. Wherever you go on holiday, you buy the biggest jigsaw puzzle of the place you visited, which you can find. Preferably over 1,000 pieces, never less than 500. And throughout the years you've traveled and you've got a massive collection. You've got your basement fitted out, shelves, all the boxes of jigsaw puzzles neatly arranged and labeled. Bought in Vienna in 1978, bought in Melbourne 1982. It's lovely, massive table, and when you want to unwind, you go into your basement and you enjoy your jigsaw puzzles. All well and good, till one weekend your daughter comes for a visit with her children, and you have a beautiful Friday night meal, everybody goes to sleep, tomorrow morning you wake up, you go down to the basement, and guess what? What do you think your darling grandchildren have done? They've taken every single box off the shelves, they've tipped it all onto the floor, and they're throwing the pieces up everywhere. Whee! Right, here you have 100,000 pieces lying on the floor. Any volunteers to try and put it together again? However devoted you are you going to try and put them together again? Or you will just wipe tears away, bring black bags, put it all in and put it in the recycling? Okay. Hello? You're volunteering to clear them up? Yeah. Go on.
Rabbi Hassan, would you mind if I asked you if you think it's a problem? You know how you said that babies, children, they take their parents for granted.
Yeah.
So we are Hashem's children.
Yes.
And it's a problem, I'm asking you, that we take him for granted.
That's right.
Because we can't see, and we can't, all these things he's telling us we take for granted.
You're right. We are taking it for granted.
Many of us just...
We do. Me too. It's normal human nature. What I'm trying to...
It's a bit of a problem.
Pardon?
Maybe. It could be a bit of a problem for some of us that we can't see a mistake or see something of him because we take him for granted.
So I'm trying to show you how to look for him and how to find him by examining the design and the complexity and the wisdom and the kindness in whatever you see in the world. Whether it's your eyes or your mouth or your feet or your hands.
We sort of know, I know that we sort of take it for granted.
We all take it for granted. This is what that great sage, Rabbi Avraham, was trying to teach us with the story of the abandoned baby and the prisoner. He made up a story as an illustration. We don't appreciate God and the world because we take it for granted, like children take parents for granted. Dad, I need some more money. Mom, my laundry please. We take it for granted. So why am I telling you this about the jigsaw puzzle? Imagine you've had the best meal of your life. A fantastic meal. There was starters, there was wine, there was soup, there was fish, there was meat, your favorite dishes, your dessert, the after dinner mints and the liqueur, everything. A good Friday night Jewish supper. Okay? And it all goes down the hatch. And you wake up tomorrow morning and you're hungry again. What happened to all the mess of food which all mashed up and down into the stomach? We're asleep, and our stomach is so intelligent, it sorts everything out, sends the carbohydrates where they're meant to go, sends the proteins where they're meant to go, sends each vitamin where it's meant to go, sends whatever each cell needs, and the blood goes round the body and drops off at every single cell. Right? It's more than the equivalent of picking up 100,000 pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and putting... we can't do it. Our stomach does it every night. Again, there's wisdom and there's kindness and there's design. So, why? How come most of the world ignores all this common sense? I mean, I'm saying it's common sense. I don't know if you agree with me. I'm trying to show you that if we use our common sense and look at design and ask myself, is this design or accident? And if it's an accident, how many accidents can happen one after the other one? And it happened to be kind as well, and pleasant as well, and enjoyable as well. But people don't. Why not? Okay, a couple of quotations, as I say in English, straight from the horse's mouth. Let's take some top scientists. Richard Lowenstein, poor guy, was Jewish, just passed away last year. He was one of the world's foremost evolutionist biologists. And he taught evolution in universities in the United States for years, right through his life. He wrote the following. Believe it or not, he wrote the following. We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just-so stories, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism. It's not that the methods and intuitions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world. On the contrary, we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the initiated. Moreover, the materialism is an absolute. Moreover, that materialism is an absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. We cannot allow a divine foot in the door. The reason why he's an evolutionist biologist is because he doesn't want God. That's why he says it clearly. We cannot allow a divine foot in the door. And another one, you may have heard of this one, Aldous Huxley. He's passed away much longer ago. He was a philosopher, evolutionist. He wrote a very famous book, Brave New World. I had reason not to want the world to have meaning. And as a result, I assumed the world had no meaning and was readily able to find satisfactory grounds for this assumption. For me, as it was undoubtedly for most of my generation, that's the early 20th century, the philosophy of meaninglessness was an instrument of liberation from a certain moral system. We were opposed to morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom. Straight admission. That's why he wanted evolution. Because in that way he can be an animal, he can do whatever he wants. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are known as the people of the book, and we gave the world the Torah, the Bible. Not me, not you and me, but we, as a Jewish people, we gave the world the Bible, which spawned two bastard children, which have produced Christianity and Islam, the world's two biggest religions. By the way, if you allow me a quip, who said Jews are bright? We produced the world's bestseller and never copyrighted it. Okay, so what does our book say? Okay? In the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. So that's how we started off. That's where we started off. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to help you work out for yourself, not because it's written, but for yourself. Can you work out for yourself that given that there is, I see where I am, I see structure, I see design, I see a limit to how many accidents, I can see there has to be something there. That's the way, if we look at the world that way, each one of us I can prove to myself if I look at the world that way. And then I can look in the Torah says, and we haven't, please God, in future sessions we'll discuss, how do we know that the Torah is the real, we have the real thing. But there we're told, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So, if you don't believe in accidents, right, and you believe in design, then you believe in the designer. Just go back to that idea. Accident or design? This is something which was taught by the late Rabbi Victor Miller in New York, already started in the 50s and the 60s, and he wrote many books about it. He kept on sort of banging in on this point. Accident or design? Accident or design. You examine the world. Is it accident or design? So back to the simple story, the child's story in the Gemara, in the Talmud. To his disciples, Rabbi Akiva added, "My children, just as the house is proof of the builder, the cloth is proof of the weaver, and the door is proof of the joiner, the world proclaims that God created it." It's reducing the issue to its simplest possible presentation. Now, the Torah says, "Ki karov elecha hadavar meod." This thing, the Torah, is very close to you. It's in your mouth and in your heart, so you can fulfill it. God is telling us, within each one of us, we have the capacity to work this out. So who can prove it to me? Who can prove it to me? Only me. There's no point in my telling you. No point in anybody telling you there is a God, there isn't a God. The scientist says, the science doesn't say, the rabbi says. Forget it. You work it out for yourself. Come to your own conclusion. And the key is accident or design. Start on that. And when you see design, then realize there's wisdom, information, wisdom, and not just wisdom. There's kindness. There's so many pleasures in life. How many fruits have you had? You get them all year round now here. Huh? You don't say shehechayon and strawberries anymore. You have them all the time. You've got lychees, you've got peaches, you've got plums, you've got apples, you've got nectar, you've got so many things. They're also delicious. That's kindness. So the world is screaming design, wisdom, information, kindness. Now it's up to us now to take the message. Okay, so don't tell me what you think. Think for yourself. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, questions? Yes, please.
Questions, please.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll have you. Okay.
Thank you for a very interesting and engaging and persuasive presentation. I just have a question really that hinges on the title of your talk, which is how do we know that God exists? And the reason I question it is that when we talk about being a Jew, or any religion for that matter, we talk of faith.
That's Christianity.
Well, do we not have faith as Jews?
We have knowledge. Let me.
Well, this is my question.
Okay, I'll answer. I'll tell you. Okay. If I tell you, so you imagine you come from China, and you come to me and say, "I want to get to Liverpool. How do I get to Liverpool?" So I happen to know a bit of Chinese, and I say to you, "Get onto Middleton Road. When you come to the roundabout, turn left. Just carry on and drive straight through. You'll get to Liverpool." I may be a joker. Maybe that's Leeds, that's not Liverpool. Maybe it's Leeds, not Liverpool. Maybe I'm sending you on a wild goose chase. You believe me, so you drive. When you get there, you say in your broken Chinese, "Liverpool?" "Yeah, Liverpool, Liverpool." Now you know. So you believed me till you found out. When you found out, you knew. Faith is a step in a ladder. You start, if you're climbing a ladder in the dark, you believe that there are rungs ahead. When you put your foot on the rung or your hand on the rung, now you know. So in Judaism, it's not enough to believe. By all means, of course you have to. If you don't believe the Torah, your parents, your grandparents, the whole Jewish nation, you're not going to start. But now the next stage is find out for yourself. Leave belief behind and use your brain and your intuition and your common sense to reach knowledge. The Torah says, "V'yadata hayom," come to know. Christianity is entirely based on unbelief. They can't prove it. It's impossible. It's illogical. Faith, belief. That's not Judaism.
But the concept of belief or knowledge, if you like, of God is the same in all religions.
No.
So it's not enough to have belief, it's not enough to have faith.
It's good to start with faith. Trust the rabbi who tells you that the Torah says that God created the world, and now, because you trust him, investigate it, work it out for yourself, and come to your own knowledge, and not relying on others. Okay? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. One thing that I always find a bit of a challenge is timelines. So we believe the world is 5,000 and odd years old, and it's going to be 6,000 years beginning to end. But forgive me, there seems to be a lot of compelling.
You can ask.
I struggle with that.
You don't ask for forgiveness. All questions and courage. Go ahead.
No, so basically.
Okay, basically.
Think about
right. I'll
dinosaurs,
give you two answers.
You know, how does that fit in with
I'll give you three answers.
Okay.
Answer number one. Okay, you're a scientist. You walk up to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden 5 minutes after creation, and you say to them, Adam and Eve, how old are you? What do they say?
They say 5 minutes.
They say 5 minutes. I say, I'm sorry, I'm a scientist. You're 6 foot tall, you've got teeth, you've got hair, you're talking, you're understanding. You look more like 20 years old. So is Adam 5 minutes old? Which is what he says he's just been created? Or is he, what you see is a 20-year-old. How old is he? He is 5 minutes old, but God created him at an age of 20 years. And now Adam goes along and he says, I'll show you something. And he takes a big saw and he takes a giant California redwood and he saws it through and he says, count the rings. How many rings do you think you're going to find in a massive giant California redwood? You find 800 rings. How old is the world? 3 days old. God created an old world. That's one answer. Okay? So of course it looks old, because he made it look old. And he made it look so old that he put a star 10 billion light years away, and the light's here. So you say, since the light takes 10 billion light years to get here, the world must be 10 billion, or at least the stars must be 10 billion light years old. No, God made the world, and he made the stars, and he put the light there. So he made an old world. That's one answer. So they're right when they say the world looks 15 billion years old. It does. It was made to look that way. Well, that's one answer. Another answer, this comes from somebody called Gerald Schroeder. He says the following. Time is relative. That's already, it's an accepted in science that time is relative. Time depends on speed of movement and gravitational pull. The stronger the gravitational pull, the slower the clock works. The faster the clock is moving, the slower the clock works. If the world started with a big bang, at the beginning all matter was concentrated in one spot, all the gravity was there, heavy gravity, and the speed was incredible. So a clock on the edge of the Big Bang would mark 6 days, and today's clock would mark 15 billion years. There's no contradiction. It depends on gravity and speed. That's another answer. And as far as the dinosaurs are concerned, another answer, it's a different question. The Torah tells us that only certain animals survived the flood and others were wiped out. So we expect to find extinct species. It's the other way around. We expect to find extinct species. So before anybody said, I found dinosaurs, we knew we can expect to find something.
I was told another answer as well.
Go on.
That the 6 days of creation are not, sorry, I'll take it off. The 6 days were not 24-hour days. So day 6 or Friday, was all of the animals created. So you have the dinosaurs coming, living, being wiped out, all the other creatures existing, and then Adam and Chava being created right at the end of day 6. But that whole period of time was one day.
But you have a problem.
Why?
Because you use the count of 6 days to keep Shabbos. And you don't keep Shabbos once every 1,000 years or 10,000 years.
Then you could say that the 24-hour period was invented at the end of day 6.
No. You could say that God said He ran the world on He ran the world on a cycle of 24 hours for us. For us.
Yeah, from the creation of humans.
Yeah. No, from the creation, it says Vahi Erev Vahi Boker. There was evening and there was morning, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4.
From day 1 of creation, it had to be 24 hours.
It could have been 24 hours.
It could have been, or it had to be.
Or it could have been. If you take the clock at creation time being slower than a clock today, then the clock marks 6 times 24 hours.
So it had to be 24 hours.
Halachically, we take on 24 hours because we keep 7 days and then keep Shabbos.
Right. Okay.
Why would God create a very old world? I appreciate things presuming had to be there for existence.
But okay, yeah, right. Why did God have to create a very old world? Imagine He created a very young world and put people in a young world. There'd be no plants, there'd be no trees, there'd be nothing. Okay, so if He created a baby, who's going to look after the baby? So He created fully developed humans and a world which could receive them and accommodate them and give them what they needed. Okay? Yes?
You said if we see some cloth, I'll take, we take it for granted.
A weaver.
Okay? And if we see a house, there was a builder. If I wanted to prove that, I would take you to the builder and say, you show me how you build a house, let me see you build it. Then I'm convinced. Why did there need to be a mass revelation at Har Sinai to, in effect, for the giving of the Torah? Why couldn't they just take it that Hashem gave the Torah and have a mass revelation?
Very good. So our first ancestor, Avraham Avinu, worked it out himself. He observed the complex world, the design, the structure, how everything fits in with everything else, which fits in with everything else. Everything is perfectly coordinated, and the world is very kind. And he came to the conclusion that there's a God. And he taught his children and his grandchildren. But then God felt that the world needs confirmation and not just leave it up to individuals to work it out. So he brought the children of Avraham Avinu to Har Sinai and gave them a revelation and showed himself clearly to all of them and said, here I am. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the one who's done all this. So if for our convenience, so it should be easier for us, he gave us the revelation. Because we're not all Abrahams. Yeah?
You concentrated quite specifically on the goodness of God, but there are so many bad points.
Right. Therefore, this was planned in advance.
So why bad things happen to people?
That was planned in advance, and in 3 weeks' time, Rabbi Eisenberg is going to deal with that question. You're right. There's 2 big questions. which everybody keeps on asking all the time. Is there a God, a creator? And why do bad things happen to good people? Those are the two big questions everybody's got. And even if you say there is a God, why do bad things happen? That's standard all over the Jewish world, certainly. Wherever I've been, people ask the same two questions. So we're dealing first, today we dealt with, is there a God? Please God, in 3 weeks' time, Rabbi Eisenberg will try and explain, he will explain, why bad things happen to good people. Yeah?
Two questions. Firstly, how does this prove that there's a God? And the second question is, how does this prove that the designer of our world was the God and not a designer who himself has a God?
Wow, now that's... Okay, so there is a designer, whether you call him God or not is immaterial. Okay, so let's not call it...
There could be another...
No, yeah, okay. The first question is, the answer to the first question is, there is a designer.
Mm-hmm.
Call him God, don't call him God, there is a designer. Right, now the next question, how do we know that there's not a designer to the designer, and a designer to the 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 designer? Okay, for that I have to rely on the revelation at Sinai. I don't know of an answer I can give you with my own understanding. Maybe somebody has. Have you got one?
I mean, usually the understanding that I've been given about this is there's another argument which is called the first cause argument, which you go back to saying, well, what caused this, what caused that. So if you move back at one point or another, you have to get to a cause that's going to be not physical, that's going to be infinite, whatever that cause is going to be. So you've got to move back to that stage, and when you get to that stage, whoever that was, that's the ultimate designer, that's who you refer to as God.
Okay.
That's how I usually understood it.
Okay. Are you all right with that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really answer the question of how do we know that God created our world.
Oh, it doesn't answer the question?
That tells you that there's a God, but it doesn't tell you that God created our world.
Okay, so then you'll have to come back. You'll have to come back to that. That's true.
God told us that He created the world. Now, whatever you want to call Him, He calls Himself there. Sorry, this one. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. So He told us, and we'll discuss next week how do we know that this is what He told us. He called Himself Elohim, who created heaven and earth. Now, in English, you can say God. It's an English word. In Polish, it's Bog. Right? And in French, it's Dieu. The name is immaterial. He calls Himself here Elohim. So He defines Himself as a creator. Somewhere there is someone who said to us, I am the creator.
Jews are a minority religion when you look at the world population, and how come the majority of the world hasn't kind of accepted Hashem and that God is, the creator of everything?
Okay, right. So first of all, every human being has got free will. Secondly, Christianity accepted the creator. Mm-hmm. They happened to throw in somebody else as well, but they accepted the creator. That's the largest religion in the world. Then Islam also accepted the creator. They're the second largest religion in the world. So we are the tiniest, but our two, bastard sisters have accepted the idea of a creator. So a huge percentage of the world now accepts the idea of a creator. Whether they're religious or not, whether they fully believe it or not, but in terms of numbers, the numbers are there. I can't speak for the Eastern, for the Buddhists. I don't know. I think they do believe in some sort of a original great something or other. So the only ones who don't are the idolaters. The idolaters, the Hindus, they also believe in a creator, but they believe in 1,000 other creators. But you can't say most of the world does not. As a result of the Jews, the idea of a creator is very widespread in the world. Before Avraham Avinu started, there was a handful of individuals who knew there was a creator. It's us who's given the world the wide, broad spread information about the creator.
Not really a question, just a comment. So I studied biology A-level, which was a long time ago now, but it had a massive, profound effect on me. It kind of backs up what you're saying, that when you really find out how complex things are, it makes you realise there has to be a designer. So for me, that was where I remember sitting in a lesson learning about the structure of human cells and suddenly thinking, there is definitely a God. That was proof for me. But what was very interesting is I was in a Jewish school, but my biology teacher was not Jewish. So she didn't have to say this at all, but the way she always taught things was, this is the design, this is the process, X happens, then Y happens, then Z happens, and that's how things work. And she said scientists will believe it's because of this, and Jews will believe it's because of God. And she said that even scientists know this process happens, but they cannot work out what starts the process, what triggers that process. So you as Jews will believe that's God, and everyone else will just have to kind of wonder about it. So and I really like the way she did it.
Very clever, yeah. In fact, Gerald Schroeder, I mentioned before, he was a nuclear physicist, and then he took a course in cellular biology, and he said after that he was convinced there has to be a creator.
Yeah.
When you see the intricacy of a cell, just one cell, so highly designed and functioning, it couldn't have happened by itself.
Yeah.
I'm always astonished that David Attenborough, with all of the stuff that he's done, does not believe in God. Because he's such an evolutionist. I was watching his thing, that he's got his brief, and I sit there and I'm absolutely, and that for me is reaffirming that there is a God. For me, that does it. I look at his programs and I'm just blown away. And he just goes, and then you can see how this has evolved and how. And I'm going, no, sorry, I don't agree. That to me says that somebody has designed this, because how can you say that isn't? So I'm with you that this is a design. So my question is, you talked about intelligent design. I understand that to be almost a step on from creationism. And there's creationism, which is the world is created in 7 days, and then in America this movement came forward about intelligent design, which was sort of a spin on creationism, wasn't it? Which was, well, we don't quite believe in the 7 days stuff, but we do believe in divine intervention that created the world, an intelligent designer. So are you saying the world was created in 7 days by a divine presence, and we are creationists and we believe in that? Or are you saying, well, actually Judaism might have a bit of room for...
No. I'm saying that we have a Torah, which we have to discuss next week, and the Torah was revealed by God to us at Sinai, and God dictated the Torah, and God wrote in the Torah, I created the world.
In 7 days, in 6 days in the 7th day.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have that advantage.
Okay.
Yes?
This is a very abstract question, but I don't quite understand what the conflict between the two is, between the science. If a scientist wants to investigate a certain way and a process, why? I mean, there are many scientists who do believe in God.
Right.
And unless they are using it in an anti-humane way, or for evil, say, in a very broad sense, why does it matter at all that they are trying to investigate the methods of Hashem?
They should investigate, because the more you investigate, the more science you know, the more you see the wisdom.
Yes, and they're saying they want to know the mechanics of it.
By all means.
Yeah.
But they stop short of the final conclusion that there is a creator. And for that I gave you two examples from scientists. It does not suit them and their lifestyle to accept a creator, because it's uncomfortable that there is a God who tells me what I have to do. It's human nature. People don't want to accept a God because it disturbs their lifestyle. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've been a fantastic audience.